Okay, today I'm going to talk to you guys about a different type of birth disorder. It's called Noonans Syndrome. Noonans Syndrome is a rare birth defect, and it's found in men and women. It's found all over the world. It doesn't matter culture, doesn't matter who you are, anyone can have it. This defect can be noticeable if you know what to look for. Noonans Syndrome it has abnormalities for facial features. Different external, internal features can be different. Many people probably have never heard of this disorder because it's very rare. It's not very common, and unless you are involved in it in some way, you probably won't know what it is. So I would like to talk to you and give you some facts, share some stories about some people who have Noonans Syndrome or know someone with Noonans Syndrome, and then you guys can know more facts. Noonans Syndrome causes internal problems as well as external. Internal problems can be anywhere from heart defects, different defects with like maybe their stomachs, intestines. Premature babies are usually born. That means that maybe something in them hasn't developed right, and Noonans Syndrome is the cause of that. So most, 3/4 of Noonans Syndrome babies are premature, meaning that they are going to have difficulties throughout their life. It's hands down, no question about it, they are going to have something wrong inside of them. This disorder can be seen or determined by different features of the body that are not the same as someone else who may not have Noonans Syndrome. So their appearance, their stature, facial features, ears and eyes might be in a different place. They might not be in the same level. Some of those may be short stature, meaning that as us, our shoulders, our hips, our legs, they're all in a certain spot, whereas Noonans Syndrome, they might be shorter, so their shoulders might seem lower than other people. Heart defects, meaning they could have holes in their heart, they could have leaky valves. This is a major effect, and this is something that could eventually kill them if they don't get it checked out. They could have bleeding of the heart as well, and bleeding problems. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they're anemic. It doesn't mean that just because they get a cut they're going to bleed really bad. But they're having cases of people randomly bleeding from their ears, eyes, nosebleeds, different stuff like that. They also have development delays, so again, they won't develop as fast as someone without it. And they also have malformations and disfigured abnormal bones and rib cages. This actually will cause, you'll see if someone with Noonans Syndrome has their shirt off, their rib cage is going to be pushed in and their stomach is going to be out. So they're going to look pregnant, but they're not. It's just because their rib cages are closer in, they're smaller. Eye abnormalities are very, very common with someone with this disorder. You might see glasses, a lot of glasses, because their eyes don't develop right. They also will sit lower on their face, so their eyes are going to be closer to their nose, and they might look like they have a bigger forehead. Children with Noonans may also have more problems with speech, language, and the way they learn. This doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be slower. It just means that they have a different way of, I guess this is every kid in general, but they have a different way of learning. Language-wise, they might learn better or worse. It just depends on the child and the extreme of their disorder. Statistics show that 50 to 70% of people born with Noonans do have short stature. So that is very common in people with this disorder. Young men usually tend to have late puberty and a growth spurt at an older age. So where most boys will go through puberty 13, 14 years old, they might wait until they're 15, 16, 17 before they even get a growth spurt or go through puberty. In some cases, the young men tend to have a undescended testicle, meaning that one of the testicles might not be totally formed, or it might not drop at a certain age. This could eventually cause infertility. Most Noonans Syndrome kids that have an extreme case cannot have children. only a small percentage of children have to be in special learning classes, so they still have the intelligence of a normal person. It's not that they're slower learning, stuff like that. They can still learn at the right pace. It's just some of them may just need to be in special classes. It is known to be said that only 1 in 1,000 to 2,500 people are diagnosed with Noonans syndrome. So that shows that not very many people have it, and that's why it's so unheard of, because unlike cancer and diabetes and Down syndrome, these are all things that you see every day. I mean, it's very common, unlike Noonans, which is not common at all. About 50% of people with Noonans have mutations, meaning that inside of their body, their cells might be different, their genes might be mutated. This could be 2 genes mutated into 1, it could be 1 gene mutated into 2. The mutations take place in different genes carried by their mothers or their fathers, depending on which parent or which gene is mutated. PTPN11, SOS1, KRAS, and RAF1 are the genes that are usually the cause of Noonans syndrome. So if one of these genes is mutated at all, affected at all, it can cause Noonans. And Genetic Home References was the website I went to for a lot of those facts. These genes are also important for the body to produce protein, so this could be a big problem as well. Because if these genes are mutated, and if they're mutated badly, the body may not be able to produce protein, which could affect the child in the long run, and it could end up to death. Inheritage-wise, just because a child has Noonans does not mean that the mother or the father is going to show signs of Noonans. They might be a carrier or a mutated gene, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be diagnosed with that as well. This is an effect that is inherited by an autosomal dominant pattern. This just means that one copy of the gene is altered and causes this defect. So again, it's just the one gene that is mutated or altered, and it causes the child to have Noonans. This disorder can be passed by people who have no history of Noonans syndrome in their family. So again, Down syndrome, you don't have to have a Down syndrome parent to have Down syndrome. Like Noonans, you could go generations after generations with nothing and then have baby with Noonans syndrome. This is not a disorder that you can determine while the baby's in the womb. Down syndrome, again, you can get a testing done to see if your baby is going to have it. This is not something you can do that with. You can't just go in, take some amniotic fluid, and see if your baby has Noonans syndrome. And then you can't see it right away after birth either. It's very hard to detect it. They have different tests. As the children get older, they can come in, take different tests, written tests, hands-on tests to see if the child has Noonans. So a little bit of history about Noonans syndrome. In 1963, there was a pediatric cardiologist named Jacqueline Noonan. He was from University of Kentucky, and he noticed cases where children were being born with heart defects, short stature, and lower eyes and ears, again, which is another facial feature of how you can determine if a child has Noonan. This was seen in both females and males, so that's how they classified that in early ages, that both genders could be diagnosed. It wasn't just one or the other. They also determined that their chromosomes were considered normal. So the chromosomes are what causes Down syndrome. So this is how they determine that Down syndrome and Noonan syndrome are completely different. They're not at all the same disorder. They may have similarities, but they're no way connected. A parent who has this disorder has a 50% chance of passing it to their child. And then I have a friend, and her little boy is 10 years old, and he was diagnosed with Noonans syndrome. And she was telling me different things about how they deal with it and everything. And she told me a great website, and it was called TNSSG.org, which stands for the Noonans Syndrome Support Group. and it's a national-wide support group, and it's parents, doctors, just people who have dealt with it, but have similar experiences, and they go on and they talk to each other, they help each other out, they are there for each other pretty much. There are many different ways to deal with this disorder, and some people find it helpful to join a Noonans support group. So it's a free thing. You don't have to do it necessarily if you don't want to. She told me, though, it's very helpful when you want answers or if you just need to vent. It's a great opportunity. These groups consist of parents of children dealing with similar experiences. In some groups, there are also doctors to help the families with questions. These families can talk to each other and help one another with situations they have already experienced. This also helps to show families they are not alone. There are more people around the area who have similar problems. My friend always tells me how much she truly loves her support group. She says she doesn't know what she would do without them. She says being able to talk to other moms and dads is a great relief when you just need to vent. My friend is going through so much with her son. He was a premature baby with many problems. They were told he wouldn't make it to birth, that he would die in the womb, but he didn't. She was very upset when she was pregnant with him because she was about 5 or 6 months along, and she went in for an ultrasound, and they had saw that he had holes in his heart, and they said that he probably will die. He probably won't make it to birth, and they said we should just terminate the pregnancy. And this really, really made her mad. And she said, no matter what, he's my son, and I'm not going to do that. So she went back in. There was other complications. I believe his cord was wrapped around his neck very tight, and they couldn't deliver him because he was so young. And she had gone in a couple weeks later, and she hadn't felt him move in a while, and apparently the cord was gone. It wasn't wrapped around his neck anymore, and he was still doing good. So she ended up having him. And his name's Dominic, and he suffers from an intestinal problem. He had surgery about a year ago to move his intestines to the right spot. His large and small intestines were too close together and located higher up than normal. So instead of his intestines being down under the stomach, they were up in his rib cage. And they were extremely tight. They were actually wrapped around each other. So they were in Iowa City for over a month. And he had 2 surgeries to move them. They almost had to put the bag on his side, but they didn't have to because he came through recovery really good. He was also born with a heart defect. His mom was recently told Dominic has a valve and it's leaking. They knew eventually he would have to get surgery for his heart because when you have holes in your heart, it's going to happen sooner or later. She was hoping later, but he was told that one valve is leaking and it's not a very good leak. So they're going to have to go in and fix it. They were also told he will have to have heart surgery in the next year because this could be a dangerous issue. It could eventually kill him if they don't take care of it. There are always going to be hospitals to get checkups. Dominic is constantly being taken to Iowa City for checkups because of his surgery on his intestines, making sure everything's going okay, and because of his heart. He's only 10, so he's been through a lot. He's been to probably more hospitals, taken more medications than an average adult. He knows what it means when he doesn't feel good. He knows that he's going to have to get heart surgery. They didn't tell him when, but he knows. He knows that he has Noonans Syndrome. He knows that he's special, and he's okay with it. They take very good care of that. It's a rare disease, and it's not very common, but it needs to be spoken more. It needs to be heard more. Some of Dominic's problems that he has is he's on different medications for his Noonans Syndrome, but with Noonans Syndrome, you can also have the other ADHD, ADD, all that kind of stuff too, and he has some of that, so he's always on medications. Medications are hard because you don't know how the body's going to take it, especially with a lot of his problems. And a couple of his medications actually make him very tired and emotional. He gets very sick. He can't eat any dairy products. He's not allowed to have cheese, ice cream. He has to have substitutes for that. So that is another really big effect on him being so young. His emotions skyrocket when he's on the meds. The smallest thing, if you ask him to pick up a pen, he cries. It's just the medications and what they do to him. His weight, he's very small and he's very petite. When he was 6 years old, he has a younger brother who is 4 now, so he's about 2 or 3 years younger than Dominic. And he came out one day and Mari, his mom, was looking at him and he was wearing shorts. And she just couldn't figure out why the shorts looked weird. So she went over to Dominic and she said, "Where did you get your shorts?" And he said, "Out of the laundry basket." She's like, okay. So they took them off and looked, and the shorts were 24-month pants. They were his baby brother's pants. So that just kind of shows you how small he was. He could fit in 24-month-old pants when he was 4 or 5 or 6. So that was, he's little, and he does have the dipped-in rib cage. You can see when he doesn't have a shirt on, his ribs are pushed in, and he has a stomach, but he's small. He does have the lowered ears and the eyes. You can tell when you look at him that his eyes and his ears are lower. And sometimes he does look very sick, but he has a lot of problems. He's doing better, and we're hoping surgery will go within the next year. So Mari has been fighting a lot, but she knows a lot and she understands it, and it's part of their life and they're taking control of it. So Noonans syndrome is not something just to pass by. Thank you.